Hello and welcome to the Future of Dogs podcast, a place for the whole dog world to come together and ask the big why and what if questions that will shape the dogs of the future. Join me, Hannah Malloy, dog behaviourist and body language expert, as we chat to some of the world's most groundbreaking professionals intent on enriching and evolving the future for dogs. This series is sponsored by Amplified Behaviour, my online video school where you can find quality dog behaviour and training advice at a fraction of the price, because I believe everyone should be able to afford the knowledge that they need to give their dogs the best life possible. Let's jump in to the next episode. Welcome to the Future of Dogs, and this is part 2 on the future of dog education. And I am so very grateful to be joined once again by two amazing women, Justine Schuurmans and Kim Brophey. Am I getting that right? She's so laughing at me when I do her surname.
You can just say Schuurmans if you want. It's a bear of a last name. So
you
Schuurmans
gave it to me once.
funny.
You said this is how it works, and so I've pulled it off. I think pretty close.
You did a great job. I just don't want you to feel the pressure.
Listen, it's your name. I think it's important. It's a really important thing to get
I
right.
say Schuurmans if it makes you feel better.
All right, sound. From this point onwards, I'm not going to put the effort in.
Good. Slack off.
Anyway, it's so good to have you both back. And I know at the end of the last episode, we were talking about the dial method. Justine's amazing construct for pet dog owners to really be able to get the knowledge they need before they even start training. The steps, the layers that we need to understand, seeing our dog, understanding how to talk to our families about it, and we were going to pick apart in this next episode a little bit more about what Kim has been doing in the world of the legs and family dog mediation expanse and the total welfare model. But I think it would be nice, actually, Justine, just to start with a nod to the fact that you and I work quite closely together now in Parliament, right? So there is something called the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Dog Welfare. You guys will have heard me talk about this in terms of the responsible dog ownership umbrella campaign. And Justine is co-leading in that arm for education. And we've already talked about this in another episode, but really there are 5 areas that came out of some work that we did looking at the dog bite problem, and the problem in the UK specifically around responsible dog ownership, and that actually we're not sourcing dogs well. We don't really understand their needs. We're not caring for them in terms of our industries are very unregulated. So there's lots of professionals with no basic standards that can be met. We're not keeping clear records, and we're not enforcing welfare standards. So these are 5 huge issues, and our umbrella campaign aims to bring campaigners together under one of these 5 arms and really look at how can we improve these areas. So it is such a privilege, Justine, to get to work with you in the area of education. I wonder, can you tell us, we had a meeting about the definition of responsible dog ownership recently and got lots of stakeholders together. Can you just tell us a little bit more about like the areas that we were looking at there? Like how do you even start having such a broad conversation about responsible dog ownership?
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Period. Or full stop.
Yeah.
It's really hard because there's so many things that you want people to know. And there are limitations on how much time and money we have for people in the public to be able to, to present themselves, we want people to know everything, right? And we just want to ensure that they are setting themselves and their dog up for the best life that they can have, keep their community safe. But that's not just a quick conversation. It's like having a baby. You just, don't know where to start when you're pregnant. You're like, my goodness, there's so much to learn. Mm-hmm. So the meeting was really fascinating. Obviously, there's people with from different walks of life, different professions, and different opinions. And we kind of broke it down into the different buckets. So I think after we had that meeting, we took everybody's perspectives into consideration, and then Debbie Lucken from Kids Around Dogs and I, who are leading this piece of the campaign, we realized that there's some additional stuff that we wanted to layer on that. So again, we take that and it's just like more ingredients going into the cake. But how do we keep this simple for the public? So I think that one of the most important pieces that we would like the public to consider is preparing for a dog, or having like, are you actually ready for a dog before you go running headfirst into this? I mean, I've advised a lot of people in my career not to get a dog.
I've met a lot of people who've said, I'm a really responsible dog owner because I don't have a dog.
Yes, yes, exactly.
And this came out, didn't it, Justine, of a conversation that was being had around, defining responsible dog ownership. Like I'm a big believer that you can't tell somebody that they haven't done something that they didn't know they were supposed to do. So, and this is where I think with education, we're like, well, when we say, well, you're such an irresponsible dog owner, you're like, well, where was the do we get the highway code? Did we get that?
Yeah,
did we ever have?
Exactly.
And so our heart was to really step into this space and say, is it possible for us to create a dog highway code that everybody could work through and understand the major points of, in order that they are able to be a responsible dog owner? And I can't wait to get into more of what you guys have been working on together, because I think it's an even thicker slice of cake. But this meeting was just the bare bones, like actually at the basic level, what do dog owners need to know? They need to know dog law. And we were looking at it in 4 places, weren't we, Justine? We were saying, you've got you and your dog at home.
Yep.
You've got you and your dog with your family
outside
at home.
Yes. Yep.
So the people that you're responsible to around your dog at home, so your home and neighbours, and then you and your dog outside, that's a different context, and then you and the community, so how you have to interact with the community because you have a dog. And there's kind of 4 different contexts that are really important that we are able to see, have like learning objectives for us as dog owners in each one that I don't think have ever really been set in the first place. So it's an ongoing piece of work, isn't it, Justine? But I think where we're at right now is quite exciting.
Well, you're completely right. It's really hard to hold people to a standard if they've never been given the information in the first place. And so, yes, creating something that is palatable and fun, that they'll walk away from this education and be so thrilled that they actually were a part of it, and they will learn something great. That's the mission, is not just to make people feel like they have to have this learning as part of getting a dog, but they actually love it and they'll be telling their friends about how wonderful it was. That's my goal.
It's super. And we've got the best people at it. So I'm just really chuffed to have you on board and leading in this space, because you really are, you and Debbie together, and all of the amazing professionals you work alongside as well, I should say. Each of you represent massive networks of incredible professionals. I know Kim was saying just in that last episode, we really want to bring professionals in. If there is an area where someone has got an idea for meeting a dog's need in a particular way, that's the key, isn't it? Collaboration is so crucial for us to be able to improve dog welfare going forwards. So yeah, it is an ongoing conversation. We can't wait to see what's going to come out of that, but hopefully we will have some really clear learning objectives that the UK at least can start to make some progress in saying, right, we want all dog owners to know this, and this. And it's not going to blow your mind, and it's not going to be overwhelming, and it's definitely going to improve the world of dogs. So, Kim, tell us more about what you've been doing. Legs, tell us about Legs. Tell us about the family that you've been creating around Legs, and there's something called total welfare that you've been moving into since you released Legs. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's interesting because it goes back to kind of moment 1 of our whole conversation today about like what was our big if, right? If only. And for Justine and I, both of us, it was to understand your dog, like see them for who they are, right? Know what you're looking at. And so the entire Legs course was a course of that, really. It was essentially born of my own dissonant experience in the industry, having a background in applied ethology, coming into the field young and new as a trainer, and people being like, this is how you do it. And then dogs would have these quote unquote behavior problems that were really just natural responses based on all the moving parts of who they were as an animal. And so the more that I was learning about all those pieces that contribute to who these animals are, I felt like we had to kind of share this. We had to make sure that people understood basically what goes into what's under the hood of what we're experiencing. Like that's the first thing. And then later on, we would figure out what to do about it. So I'll get to that. That's kind of the total welfare bit. But so that step one essentially is taking the whole idea that they use for other captive species of animals, again, of looking at the phenotype of the animal. So first, the natural history, the genotype of the animal. So basically just like, what is this species all about, right? Like a
So
big high level.
genotype means
Genotype, genetics.
There we go.
Yeah.
And the phenotype means?
The phenotype is when we qualify that genetic material you're born with so it's the nature and nurture. So the learning environment genetics itself, the genotype is just that G of the legs. And then the phenotype is when we add together the learning that animal has, the environment that animal's in, and then the self is the internal conditions and environments: sex, age, health, nutrition, disease, injury, and personality, right? So all of those things are part of any animal. Like we all have legs, it's not just dogs, like every human does, every animal does. But obviously we can get stuck in the scientific lingo and it makes it hard to talk with each other about the dog's phenotype and all of that. So legs is just a way to like break it down so we wouldn't forget anything, because we were so fixated as an industry on the learning. It's all how you raise them, remember? The blank slate thing.
Or the world is like, it's the breed. That's it. That's all I can see.
Yes, one or the other, exactly. Like either it's just a lemon or these dogs are inherently vicious, so it's all genetics. Or it's all how you raise them. And like many things, people just would pick their camp, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so, we've known from science for years that it's nature and nurture, and that all these things matter. So the idea is really just to kind of recognize our dogs, pulling back the curtain on who they are, understanding that from a really practical level, naming all of those moving parts, making sure we're giving consideration to all those parts when we're looking at these behavior problems, again, in quotes, that we're getting presented with, which is, instead of being training problems, by and large are just the kinds of problems we would expect to see for an animal in captivity, who's in kind of a square peg in a round hole, where like the lock of who they are genetically is not meeting the key of the environment well, so we're getting friction, we're getting the rub. So that's the legs model, and that actually is so interesting because I was talking about this for a decade, and everyone was like putting their fingers in their ears and walking out of the room for as long as I could remember. And for whatever reason, after COVID, something shifted. And because I presented it, right then, essentially, at Wolf Park, right after the lockdowns kind of were relieved a little bit, we were ready for it. Like everyone was like, oh my gosh, like, yes, this is what I've been experiencing. This is what I've been seeing. So we've grown really rapidly, I think, because so many people felt that it resonated with them and their own experiences as pros. And it was a conversation that hadn't been had in the industry before. And so essentially then now what's happened is we've gotten so much momentum in the last 4 or 5 years with thousands of professionals in over 25 countries that are all throwing their hat in the ring and starting to contribute to that greater conversation. I came to a point where I had to choose whether I was going to sell my local company in order to kind of take that conversation to the next level, because I couldn't do both. I couldn't run the online school and the local company.
Why
so
not?
When I sold the local company, what'd you say?
Why not?
I know, right? Should have been able to, right?
I mean, come on.
And then that's what gave me the space and the time to take the legs model to the next level with total welfare, which was fully integrating it with the 5 domains. And then having a step of actually assessing and tracking welfare via a new measure of welfare that's in the applied ethology kind of field of behavioral diversity. So basically using that as a metric to determine what an animal's welfare likely is. And so that's a new exciting thing that we have. That's the most kind of objective measure we've had to date, because obviously welfare is subjective, right? Like,
for sure.
It's how you feel. It's your experience. It's your domain. And we can't ask. We can make assumptions and judgments based on, our projections or watching their body language and their actions, but ultimately we have to use that same model of what we would expect from the phenotype, how we meet those needs in the 5 domains, and then how we assess that, like based on, are they getting to be who they are, is the bottom line of behavioral diversity. Are you getting to express your legs in your life and reality so that you feel, at home in the world, basically.
And what I'm hearing is actually like that's very much the trainer piece, right? That's like, there's a lot of detail there. There's a lot. I know if I was a dog owner, I'd be like, what? I have to meet all of the wait, what? And there's lots of detail there. But that's kind of the point, isn't it? Is that there is a degree of detail that is required of the professional within the field. And we love it. We love the detail. Give me all of the different criteria that need meeting. Let me see the animal. Let me learn more. We're really fascinated by that. And actually, it sounds like Justine's got a really great piece here that is that appeals to the dog owner and simplifies a lot of that sort of scientific understanding in a way that is chewable, is digestible, I suppose. And I feel like you guys already went ahead of me here, and you're probably working together on this at this point. Am I right? Is there something in the pipeline for you to be like pulling these two sides together?
Yeah, we've got them fully mapped here. So that, I mean, we did when we knew it, but she didn't build the dial based on total welfare, but I was building total welfare while she was building the dial method. And even the dial method was complete before I finished total welfare. And then we looked at it and, ended up spending a whole day kind of mapping it to realize that like the 3 steps of total welfare are essentially echoed in the dial method. And the dial method is the family-friendly version of all this nerdy science. And so, while us pros can sit there and apply the total welfare model, the public can also trust that the dial method is well-rooted in science, well-rooted in animal welfare best practices.
And I suppose the good thing about the dial method is it has that capacity for trainers to give it to their clients and access it and go, do you know what, you guys should watch this, because it's a quicker conversation that's been well thought out, that aligns with what I'm about to teach you in terms of my like increased size toolbox, you might say. So I think I'm going to just whack open. If you guys are watching this on YouTube right now, you should be able to see a slide that we're sent in. So I'm going to throw this up, but you guys are going to talk through it. So you're not missing out if you're on the podcast at all. But for those who are going to watch this on YouTube, just talk me through what we're looking at here in the way that these two concepts interact.
Oh, we can split it up by the top and the bottom, can't we? So obviously, there's 3 steps, and then for the professionals up the top, Kim.
Yep. So the 3 steps of total welfare are to identify the legs or the phenotype, right? And in step 2, provide for the 5 domains of animal welfare. And then step 3, assess that welfare over time as it changes to improve or deteriorate using behavioral diversity as a measure. And so what's lovely is that Justine on the bottom end here has her client-facing part of all of that, which I'll let her walk through.
So if you'll see that the dial has had a chunk taken out of it for number 1, which is the see your dog piece, which is where you get to identify the phenotype there. That's what the public will be doing. They don't need to know the words identify the phenotype. They can just do see your dog.
Yeah, what am I looking at?
Exactly. And then in the providing for the 5 domains, if they follow the next 3 zones, parent your dog, teach your crew, and create a plan, that actually covers the things that you need to be doing anyway to provide for the 5 domains. And then obviously the last piece is Kim's amazing new app, which will be out soon. And we've shared the same artist, which we should give a massive big up to her, Georgie Blazer from Trick Woofs, and people just know her and love her. She's incredible, not just as an artist and a trainer, but also as a human being. We adore her. And I just think it's hilarious and wonderful that tracking for behavioral diversity is what most people call a dog trainer and complain about. Like, this is the aim, is to have the thing that we actually have been irritated about. It just changes the way that we see it. And I think if clients have access to watch the dial method before the trainer even steps into the room or whatever, I mean, I was going to say before they get the dog from the breeder or from the shelter and the rescue, the landscape is already set for them to understand all of this piece. They're not making that call and saying, hey, my dog's digging up my backyard, because they'll already get it in 40 minutes. Their brain will be like, oh, that kind of makes sense. He was actually kind of born to dig. That's not an unusual thing for a dog to do.
Yeah. I love that. And so,
and as I was sitting here listening to you guys talking about what you're doing in Parliament, like just to kind of take this to the next level, right? Like you could be looking at this whole thing of seeing your dog, parenting your dog, teaching your crew, and creating a plan, which is the public facing version of it. And you could turn that into the elements you were discussing of, first there's the dog, and then there's your home, and then there's out and about. So you basically could take that same framework and talk about it. All right, just for the dog's needs.
Yep.
What does that mean? And then what does it mean for my safety and my family's safety and everyone else being on board, like in the house? And then once we open that door and go out there, I'm still applying the same model just to these different contexts.
And it's so important to have a framework, I think, just to help us to make sure that we're ticking all the boxes. Like building anything, there are certain steps to building a house that are required. If you don't put foundations down, the house is going to fall down, And I think that's the hard thing. And I really love the solutions that both of you have come up with and the way that you've amalgamated them, because we do need a framework. We do. We need a basic set of instructions. And with the dog world, we really have for about, 40, 50 years, just made it up. We've asked the groomer, or we've asked the breeder, or we've asked the local dog trainer down the road who has been doing what their parents did or their parents did. And we're in such a beautiful time, I think, in our field. I don't know about you guys, like when I stepped into animal behaviour as a degree, first of all, I was shocked that it was even a degree. That was in 2005. I was like, you can study that at uni? You can study animal behaviour? That's so cool. That was even a possibility to me was bonkers. And the field is so new, isn't it? We're in such a young environment. Psychology on its own is a really young science. So dog behavior to this degree and delicious depth, I think it's just so wonderful to see what can be pulled out after 20, 30 years of us really geeking out in this arena and wanting to know more and wanting to make life better for our dogs.
And that's one of the things when you go, like, I was thinking, we did the conference last month, the ABK conference, and the wealth of knowledge in that hall and the topics of conversation are it's off the charts.
Yeah.
And so interesting, and there's so much to be gleaned from it. And I always walked away feeling really sad for my clients that they don't have access to that. They probably wouldn't want to sit there for 2 days listening to all of it. But they could benefit from so much of the intelligence and the information that was in that room. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to make this stuff sticky enough that people it's just in who they are. They just know it. And they say it as easily as like, oh, well, they're a blank slate, or it's all in how you raise them, or whatever. We want them to have different phrases. That's my goal, is to have different phrases that they're like, well, they need to have their needs met.
Yep. Oh, the language is so important, isn't it?
Language it changes everything.
Things like, adopt, don't shop. Well, it was really important for a very small period of time, but I think as an ongoing mantra, really unhelpful. Things like this that we're like, responsible dog owners neuter. We've come a long way, actually. Yep. We needed to do that for dog control, but actually we really need to be looking at this language in more depth. Really cool, actually. Yeah, just thinking about phrases. So tell us more about the app, like Kim, practically, what does that look like as an app? We're very much app-centric in this generation. So what will I get if I was interacting with the app? Is it for dog owners and trainers? Like, who would use the app?
So the app is primarily for professionals, right? Mm-hmm. Because of everything we've been talking about. But there will be certain permissions for the public. So basically the public would be using the app along with their professional. So essentially the app, called Total Welfare, is these 3 steps that we were talking about, that if you're on YouTube, you can see it still on the screen here. So you only really, need to use the third step if you want. If you didn't want to use total welfare and you're just interested in running behavioral diversity reports, you could do that. But it's meant to be even like a client case management tool for pros. So you'd go in and there's fields for you to enter all the information about that dog's learning history, their environment, their genetics, upload their DNA results, their self conditions, anything medically we need to know about nutritionally, personality wise, likes, dislikes, all that good stuff. So you can have all that recorded in the dog's profile. And then you have a whole section where you make all your notes about what the provisions are. What are we doing for the dog nutritionally? What are we doing in their physical environment? What are we doing for their health and fitness, for their behavioral interactions, And so we have all of that space to track that. It's all date stamped. So we can be like, all right, look, we started taking this dog, for off leash hikes on December 12th. And then we can look and see, oh, look, the behavioral diversity reports that we're running are really improving ever since that dog has had that provision, that intervention. So then we're able to actually get some meaningful data about the effects of our work. So the behavioral diversity surveys are just these fun little things that you go in and you do it with the client at first, and then they can do it on their own, just really for practicing valuing the behaviors and feeling like they're winning when their dog is doing them. That's why we want the client engaged in the process. But I think the more meaningful data will probably come from the professionals too, especially if they're spending more time with the dogs, if they're doing board and trains, or they're seeing the dogs on a regular basis and they can run those. But essentially, we just want to be able to see that behavioral diversity score is improving. They're doing their dogging things with agency. These are not the kinds of behaviors that are taught skills and tricks and things like that. These are just the natural behaviors, things like digging and stalking and rolling and the nastiness that are all, under the dog hood. But there's a lot of really cool little pieces of behavior in there that we're not used to looking for. So I'm really excited about it because I feel like at a time when our industry is sadly really divided over distracting conversation lines, this is something we can all rally around and we can all be applying as something that is a really well substantiated model for working with any captive animal and start seeing our dogs through those different lenses. So it should be out in a couple of weeks.
So exciting. And just to clarify, so what we're saying when we talk about behavioural diversity, I'm just going to pop this slide down now so that I can see your beautiful faces a little bit bigger, if that's okay. When we talk about behavioural diversity, what we're saying is we want the higher level of welfare comes with a dog who engages in more behaviours. Would that be fair to say? Is that a good measure?
Yes, more of those natural behaviors. And so whereas essentially the concept is that if a dog has, or any animal in captivity has a lower level of behavioral diversity, that their behavior is being potentially restricted so that they're unable to express those behaviors, that they may be engaged in stereotypical behavior too much. So that what that means is repetitive, compulsive, neurotic behaviors, which happens as a kind of side effect of captivity frequently for animals. So that they're doing a few things too much as opposed to a lot of different things with relatively even distribution. Because behavioral diversity looks at the number of behaviors and also how evenly they're distributed. So if we get a couple behaviors that are taking up way too much room in the activity budget, that also would not turn into good behavioral diversity. So we want to see that we're getting a lot of those relatively evenly expressed as indicative of what's likely increased welfare. And if you think about it, any deficit in the 5 domains, like let's say the nutrition was really poor, we have a dog riddled with parasites, or we have a dog that has a major health problem and they're really not feeling well. That's going to show up in behavioral diversity. They'll have reduced behavioral diversity as a result of that. Or if they're having really traumatic interactions with people or other animals, that will also make them inhibit their behavior more and will reduce their behavioral diversity. So it's an interesting kind of way that we can indirectly gather objective data about how well they're likely feeling about their life based on how free they feel and good they feel to be who they are.
I love that. And so, Justine, can you help us to put examples to that? So can you give us an example in terms of behaviours to the layperson? What would a dog that has limited behavioural diversity do? And what would a dog that has like a range of behavioural diversity, how would that play out for us to spot?
Well, I mean, obviously the environments that they're in would create a lot of potential for more diverse behavior. So obviously if your dog is getting out and about in different locations and they have freedom in the locations that they are in, that they are able. So if you go to, we have fields here, rentable fields or sniff spots in the US where you can rent the field by the hour and you can let your dog just run free and do whatever they want. You would see a lot of different dynamic behaviors occur: running, resting, sniffing, digging, air scenting, stalking, all of those like little teeny pieces that will show up on Kim's app. That the dog will be able to express that they might not do if they were just sitting at home. And I was thinking, Kim, when you were saying this, it made me think that at the beginning of this what if, we were saying, yes, see your dog, but you also said to revere your dog for who they are. And I have a dog that is a small terrier mix, and I've had spaniels and gun dogs before him, and he's now 11. So it just shows how what was happening in my struggle with him was I did not accept him for who he was. I wanted him to be the spaniels that I had kind of grown up with, and my family and friends had spaniels. And he showed up very much as a terrier mix. And I couldn't see him for that. And when I had realized who he was and what he wanted to do, which was digging, patrolling, alerting me to squirrels that were on our property all the time, which drove me nuts because my dogs had never done this before and it was so irritating. When I accepted him for who he was and saw that he was really good at his job, everything about my relationship changed with him in that moment. And so I think these are the things that by looking at the diversity of behavior, allowing these dogs to do the different things that they would do if they had autonomy in their world, it does allow this, like, it opens this space for people to revere their dogs and look at them and say, oh my gosh, this is you. This is what you love to do. And if you've had multiple dogs, you'll see what they love to do is so different. So allowing them to express themselves like this and seeing where their happy place is allows you to provide for more of that. And I think that that's the ultimate goal, is to give, dogs this access, and be it through meeting their needs in setting up the environment, or adding some like training skills on them so that they can be off leash and you can recall them so that they get to run around. These are all important pieces to the puzzle.
I've got a client actually who has a husky cross Jack Russell, which is a really interesting breed mix, and he looks like a mini German Shepherd, which is very confusing also. And it just made me think of the way that the client for me was, he was struggling to get the dog to play with toys, even though he had a super high prey drive. He's caught and killed squirrels, and successfully. So, they have to keep him on a long line, and there's lots of other prescriptive areas. He has lots. He has a complex behaviour crib sheet, let's put it that way. But just in this area of toy play, they were like, we don't get it. Like, he'll play for a little bit, but then he seems really disinterested. And I think the best light bulb moment was when I was like, well, he's a husky as well, right? He's a terrier, but he's also a husky. And they do kind of get to the point where they're like, I'm too old for this. This is embarrassing. Why? It's just really embarrassing.
Embarrassing.
Yeah. They're kind of like, oh gosh, you're just trying so hard. And I find it really off-putting. You see that, right? With huskies and mallies, they're like, I've grown up. I've grown out of play. Thank you. But there's this terrier inside that's also like, I want to get it. And so this crisscross in this dog, and both of the owners are like, oh yeah, that's right. He is both of these breeds, and they're both expressed in a really intriguing way. We can still build their relationship around toy play and make that more satisfying. But the moment that he's like, yeah, I'm done, they're not taking it personally anymore, because they're like, actually.
And what a relief. It's like your kid that doesn't really hate sport and really loves art or really loves band saying, sorry, you're not going to get to do any of that. You're going to go to the soccer classes. And it's not fair. It's not fair on anybody. So
that's why it all comes down to that first bit again, that seeing and understanding, and
your dog
like, because and why I think legs ended up being so groundbreaking at a time we were ready for it is it's just like, it's okay to see them for who they are. Like that's what we should be doing, as opposed to like all dogs should be doing these things and never these other things. And so it's kind of cool too, when you get your like survey results with behavioral diversity, you refer back to the legs to be like, oh no, that's interesting, because I have a terrier. He's doing a lot more predating, right? Than he's doing like, maybe some hazard avoidance and management, right? Like he may not be doing a whole lot of those things, or especially like if I have a gun dog, right? I might be getting like a lot of foraging types of behaviors in that category, and probably not a lot of worrying about protecting us from the intruders to our property. So it's not that like dogs' behavioral diversity, there's not even a standard within that. Like they should all be doing this many behaviors in all these categories. It'll look different depending on their legs. And that's okay. Yeah. We just want to be optimizing that for each dog.
So super. It's fascinating.
And it's weird because it feels like we were at that place, like we kind of understood dogs more 100 years ago. We've unlearned what we know. And now we're going to have to go back and relearn it. Because, I mean, I've said this a million times, but like if you adopted a lion from a zoo and you brought it back to your house, you wouldn't be surprised if it acted like a lion.
Yeah.
And for some reason, we just don't, we're so unaccepting. I think it's because dogs in general just really want to go with the flow, and they just want to keep the peace, and they're very biddable. And, as far as animals go. And so we've kind of screwed them a little bit because of that nature, that we're like, okay, well, now you've got to do what we say. And we don't give them that ability to, have agency and be dogs.
Yeah, I think we've gotten to the squeeze point, right? Because like, I think we've gotten away with that murder, so to speak, for the last century, increasingly accidentally, with all of our good intentions, kind of exploiting and, putting on more pressure, higher expectations, more unrealistic. And then we got to the point where it's like, oh, our dog training's not working anymore. Like we were talking this morning, Justine, about that paper that just came out.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with it, Hannah, but this veterinary behaviorist named Bonnie Beaver, it was just published in November of 2024. She worked alongside the Dog Aging Project over the course of about 10 years using this CBARC, which is a validated survey for people who don't know about it. So like basically asking questions from owners about their dog's behavior. But the sample size was over 43,000 dogs, right? Over the course of 10 years.
Wow.
So that's a lot of dogs and a long period of time, right? And the percentage of people that reported that their dog had one or more moderate to severe behavior problems. So we're not
don't say it.
No,
Make
I will.
guess. Oh, okay.
I will.
Okay.
But I'm going to qualify really quick. So that's not jumping on counters. That's not like peeing on the carpet, getting in the garbage. This is separation anxiety issues. This is aggression towards family members or strangers or other animals, or sound phobias. I mean, things that are concerning, right? So moderate to severe behavior problems. So Justine wants me to kind of create some suspense here, but do you know what the percentage was of American pet dogs that were reported to have one or more moderate to severe behavior problems?
I don't know. I want to hope that it's under 25%, but I've been in the world for too long and I know that it's definitely more than 25%. What is it?
99.1.
No, that's not
99.1% of American dog owners. 43,000 dogs.
Wow.
Isn't that insane?
And so even with like some data reporting issues, like, right, let's say that's inaccurate. Okay, so it's 75%. That's horrifying.
Wow.
So, and yet we've never had more dog trainers, right? So that should become such a wake-up call for us. It's like, dog behavior problems are getting worse despite the fact that there's a gazillion competent dog trainers, good at their jobs, able to apply really like proven techniques to modify behavior. And yet those really serious problems are growing underneath it. We're just playing whack-a-mole,
That is so shocking, absolutely shocking. And you can see where the need for like a totally new approach to learning about dogs needs to come in there, because like, I mean, we know, behaviourists know separation anxiety has got nothing to do with training and everything to do with how secure the dog feels with its relationships and its environment. And that's it. And a lot of that, some of that can come from the breeder for sure. Some of that can come from, their first experiences of being separated from the litter, from the, at home. There's lots and lots of factors and variables. But in order to have a dog feel comfortable being left, a lot of that is to do with its safety, sense of safety with the person, and you don't learn that in a dog training class. And I loved training classes when I did them. I trained 10,000 dogs in 10 years, Kim, just to give you some context. In Birmingham, it was a lot. And trained trainers to train dogs, but we always started with behaviour, because everything else is a waste of time. I need to teach you how to get your dog to feel safe. If they feel safe, everything is going to come from that. But it's just not traditionally taught in training classes, is it?
And you're reframing, right? I think, for instance, separation anxiety is such a good example of this. Our common pet keeping practices in the United States, we leave a social animal alone for far too many hours in a day. And so if you're, say, applying animal welfare science for any other captive animal, you look at the species. If it's a social species, it's considered really important that they have access to a bonded social member pretty much at all times, unless you're doing some husbandry or something like that. So the norm is you're with your social members, and the exception is you're not. We've created a reality here in the US where most dogs are so over isolated, over confined for these excessive periods of time. And then we pathologize their response to that, which is actually like a normal response for a captive social animal to be like, I am not okay with this situation.
Yep.
And so we can even have a great relationship and be doing other wonderful things. But it could be that the behavior problem, again, in air quotes, that we're having with the dog might actually just be a reflection of some condition in captivity.
Oh my gosh. And the the ramifications for that for humans also, Kim, just blows my mind. Like, that's why we've created social media, isn't it?
Yes.
Because we are feeling isolated, so we'll create a social environment that we can access whenever we want to without having to do an awful lot.
And yet we isolate more because we have social media. We can sit behind our computers, and everything is manufactured experiences of social and foraging. I mean, why do I buy things I don't need? Because I'm not picking blueberries.
Yeah,
it's like we have to forage. We have to go find things.
We do that when we're stressed out as well. This is one of the great things of having Kim on tap as one of my really good friends. I'll be like, something's going on, and she'll be like, well, this is where it all stems from. But like, if you're having a drama in your life, how many times you go, I just need to go to the shop. I need to just go and buy something.
Yeah.
And you like going and buying, and it's because you're just switching off that piece of your brain when you're in foraging. You are not in your sympathetic nervous system. You're just not. So that's
actually,
sorry. Oh, you are.
Total nerd moment. I have to have a nerd moment, just because this is one of those things. When I learned it, I was like, oh my gosh. And the public will really think this is interesting. Okay. So
was that wrong, by the way? Was that wrong?
No,
that's right.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I was like, no, she's going to blow me up and say,
no.
I was like, I'm
absolutely right.
That's why I spend all this money at the shop when I'm feeling crappy.
No, it's completely right. That's exactly what we're doing. But what you're to build on your point, they actually have looked at how chronic pain is a condition of captivity, because in nature, so pain is functional. Pain isn't a thing in itself. It's a signal to our brain that tells us to modify our behavior when we're injured or sick or something like that, like do less, right? Go hide, lick your wounds, all the good things. But then what happens in nature is you can't stay in that, oh my gosh, I'm licking my wounds, I feel sorry for myself for months and months on end, you'll die. So nature says, time to get out there, time to start foraging. So then your brain gets a different signal instead of the pain signal. It's like, right, now I got to go find the things. And so the fact that we don't have to go do those things means that pain signal can perpetuate.
Oh my gosh.
So you're just like, oh my gosh, you think about all the people with chronic pain, all the animals with chronic pain, and you start realizing that the restriction itself is what's catalyzing a lot of these conditions. So even if they're quote unquote medical and painful, what if that's because they're not getting out there and getting that behavior? Oh my God.
So just to put this into context, this is like somebody who has like fibromyalgia, internet shopping, instead of going out to the shops and buying food, which might actually make their whole body feel better. And for a dog, this would be like eating a whole meal out of a bowl instead of scatter feeding it and finding it in the garden. Would that be a good...
Right, or neurotically licking their granuloma as opposed to doing allo grooming with a social member, you know? It's misplaced natural behaviors, but then we're not getting the right signal if we're not literally going through the motor pattern motions that are designed for our species. And it has all of these like cascading side effects.
Wow.
Actually, as somebody who suffers with chronic pain, I've just seen this amazing PT here in the UK who's actually really helped transform my pain. And he showed me this amazing graphic because he's obsessed with there not being this like separation of mental health and physical health. Like in hospitals, it's all about physical health. And then you go to mental health places, completely different building, different, you know, whatever. But this image, which I think really helps just to completely underscore what you're saying, Kim, is that the brain, when you see it, the brain is connected to all of these nerves and it looks like a big octopus. And so to say that the brain and the body are not connected or they are separate on any level is crazy. And all of the way I've been able to get rid of my chronic pain, so much of it is mental. And it seems madness. And he was like, by the way, I'm not saying you don't have pain, but the way your body remembers pain and the way you're thinking about pain actually is creating pain in your body.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing. Yeah. I've heard that said about things like PTSD, that actually a lot of those conditions, a lot of the pain that can be in your body is due to trauma from a really long time ago. And a lot of that happens actually because of your brain. Your brain has gone, I've gone too far over and I can't cope with that. And it's created physical pain.
Well, and our environments or our dogs' environments weren't ever really meant to be as complex as they are. Like, right, species are supposed to be in their niche and their ecosystem. We're not meant to be like jumping on planes and trains and in cars and going all over the place to all these different kinds of habitats. And so what's functional in one set of conditions and highly adaptive becomes completely dysfunctional in another. So like if you look at trauma, for example, like if in a culture that has warfare as part of that culture, right? And or for soldiers, right? So maybe someone gets sent off and they're, you know, stationed in Iraq or something like that, and they are utilizing a lot of really important kind of hypervigilance and things like that related to things that they've seen that are really functional and adaptive as long as they're a soldier. But that's why so many of the times they have difficulty coming back to civilian life is because it's dysfunctional once you're back in like La La Land, United States over here, and your head is on a swivel. It was really useful in that set of conditions, but not here. But we weren't meant to kind of bounce around. That's kind of it's all how you raise them for people is like because you should be able to live anywhere and do anything. And we're not really designed for that level of environmental complexity either.
And we all go back to the things that we often, don't we, as a species, we're like, what do I want when I need everything to be chill? I want to be in an environment that's predominantly made of wood and watch fire burning. Give me anyway, like, give
Find
me
some
cabin.
water in the background, maybe. I
want fire. I want it to chill out. I want everything around me to slow down, you know, and we all do that. That's what we all want, is that similar sort of, nobody's like, I'm going to take a holiday to somewhere really busy and exciting. Like, that's very rare that we would do that because our paces of lives are just crackers. There's too much information that is thrown at us. Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh, you're right. It's like fire and water. People go to the beach or to the water or to the earth. It's like all the elements, isn't it? You want to be out in nature. That's where we regenerate.
Yeah, basics.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and then go to places like a beach where it's not socially weird to like roll around in the sand or play with the sand and get it in your toes and fingers, and even just to like lay down on the earth, right? Like I think about like I can lay down in my yard because I don't have neighbors that can see me. But the last couple of places I lived, like my neighbors would be able to see me in the yard and they would probably think I drank too much or something if I'm just laying in the middle of my yard, you know? But that's like a normal animal behavior. It's like good for us.
It's true. It's true. Oh my gosh, ladies, we have touched on
fascinating.
such a huge range of topics. We've been through rolling in human poo, right the way through to like how we deal with trauma responses, like absolutely fascinating conversation. But I'm going to have to let you go at some point. We could continue this conversation for forever and ever, but I hope you will come back actually and let us know how this conversation is going forward in the future and what educating people continues to look like, because it's an ongoing process, isn't it? We're never finished when it comes to educating people. But are there any like closing thoughts that both of you wanted to just drop in before we find out more about where people can find out more about you and just close for this episode?
Go ahead, honey.
I would just encourage people to recognize and remind themselves that their dog is captive, and that's not a bad, punishing statement. It's just the reality of the situation. We kind of all just have to swallow that pill and then say, right, what are we going to do about it now? Right? And what are we going to do going forward for our dogs to put their welfare first and fully shoulder that rather than try to make them obey us? Mm-hmm. That would be my kind of closing sentiment. And then if people want more information about us, they can go to our website at familydogmediation.com and find out all about our different offerings. Yes, for mostly professionals, but we've also got some great resources for the public as well.
Super.
I think it's really important just for me to end on the note that both people and dogs are doing the best they can with the tools they have.
Yeah.
And people are doing the best, and it's on us. We feel the responsibility to try to get really good information out there so that people can have a better life with their dogs without even having to do any more training. That can happen before you go to a dog training class. You can create this right now just by having that lens switch that I had with my dog. It happened in an instant. And yeah, so giving some kind of empathy to the dog and also to the people living with the dog. So when you see people down the street and they're doing something that you don't like with the dog, they're doing the best they can. Mm-hmm. Most people have really great intentions. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can find out about all of the stuff at thefamilydog.com that I'm doing. And we should probably announce, Kim, we're starting our own podcast to help further the information, which is called Your Dog's Not Broken and Neither Are You. So we'll be unpacking common dog concerns, crazy stuff that dogs do, wild issues that people have, funny stories that they want to tell us, and share this through this ethology lens and sort of a practical human-based hack response, really making life easy and fun. It should be funny. We don't really like to take it too seriously and have a laugh at the same time.
There's so much to talk about, isn't there, actually?
There is.
You know, I was saying earlier before we started to record that the thing I love about this podcast, but also is super frustrating, is that each topic is a piece of the future of dogs. So we've looked at the future of dog food, we've looked at the future of dog grooming, the future of dog breeding, you know, and so, but with each topic, they could just explode into so many more directions. So I'm really pleased to hear that you are going to delve into this welfare piece in a whole series. It absolutely needs it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, each one of those pieces you just mentioned is part of the 5 domains. Like, that's what's cool, is if you really look at these conversations as they're evolving, they're ticking the boxes of what we're responsible for. And it is an exciting time in the industry. I'm actually really inspired for the future, even though I know there's a lot to be done.
Right. There's a lot of work, but there's a lot of hope. That's how I'm looking at 2025 right now, which is as this podcast is getting recorded. It's important for you to know because it's called The Future of Dogs. How far into the past are you listening to this is the question, but it's constantly changing and evolving, isn't it? So thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time to do this 2-parter. It has been an absolute joy and a deep eye-opener, I'm sure, for all of our listeners to get to absorb your knowledge. And so exciting that you're combining your work and producing something that will just really help dog owners and also pet professionals too. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And that is all for another fascinating episode of The Future of Dogs. Don't forget to like and subscribe to catch the latest episodes. And if you'd like to see the faces behind the voices and see whether I was telling the truth about how beautiful they are, and I was, you can check us out on YouTube too, because all the episodes are there. But yeah, from me and from all of our listeners, thank you so much, ladies. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you for having us.
And that's all for another episode of The Future of Dogs. Big thanks to our sponsor, Amplified Behaviour. Your host and producer is Hannah Malloy. Technical direction, audio and video producer is Mark Goslett. And the graphic designer is James Whipps.